it's Altaria. If the whole reason you clicked on this video is to figure out what Pokemon was in the thumbnail, it's Altaria. But before you click off, let me explain why. Because why would I be advocating for this PU Pokemon to all of a sudden be this great herald of the Weather War series that we got going on in Gen 9? Why do I think, even though everyone else doesn't think this mon is good, why would I think this Pokemon is good? And let me explain. Let me do some backstory. So I'll go ahead and start with what happened during my not most recent recording, but one of them. So for my April Fool's Day team, I used Zoroark in RU, and I needed a rain counter because rain looked very scary with the team I was running. I only had I had 2 priority mons, but still I wanted something to be able to switch into rain. So what do we got here for rain options? Well, we got quite a few, but I needed something to be able to do everything. Something to get rid of both the special attackers and the physical attackers. And so I actually found a really interesting answer in Altaria. So Altaria is nice because I was running a spread that allowed me to switch in. Oh, I should have probably also mentioned it's because it has Cloud9. It has Cloud9, which is part of the reason. So Cloud9 shuts off your weather when you swap in, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But that's another main reason. So Cloud9, and also it had a decent spread, and it has Congar, which is all really interesting things. So basically, I had a stat spread that allowed me to switch in to special attackers, and then I had moves and a typing that allowed me to stay in when they switched to a physical attacker. And then when Crawdaddy came out, I could Moonblast it. When Kingdra came out, I could Moonblast it. Ice Beam was just for coverage overall. There wasn't really a rhyme or reason for Ice Beam specifically, but Ice Beam's just a really nice move to have. But Moonblast actually took care of 2 of the most prominent rain attackers, and if I was smarter, I would have used something that better countered Volcanion, which could have been Draco Meteor, for example. So yeah, I used it. I thought it was pretty effective. I thought it did a good job. I used Terra Normal, so that way if it was running Shadow Ball, if I swapped into Bascullegion Legion and it was Shadow Ball and I could turn to a normal type, I ran some speed, so this way I would be faster than Adamant Crawdaunt. I can't pronounce it. I pronounce it as Crawdaddy, Crawdaunt, whatever. It's just a very unique Pokemon. I had a ton of fun with it, but it got me to thinking, why isn't this Pokemon more well known? Why aren't more teams using it? It's a pretty cool, interesting mon. It has a very unique move in Conguard, which drastically raises the user's defense by 3. And there are not many moves. I think there's only one other move, and that would be Tail Glow, that drastically raises a stat. So let me go a little bit more in depth. Now that I've told you why I'm thinking about this Pokemon, let me explain it. So Altaria has some very interesting properties. First of all, it has a Dragon Flying typing, which is bad against Sand, because Sand usually is Tyranitar, which is obviously Rock, which does super effective to flying. So that's obviously not good. But it can counter Hippowdon, which is another very good Sand setter. And of course, Ice, Snow, not good at all. But luckily Gen 9 introduced Terra, so you can switch your typing even if that is the case. Heavy Duty Boots also allows it to bypass the hazards on the field, which is a big problem in this metagame just because of Goldango and OU, and spikes are very common in all the other tiers, and stall is very uncommon, so there's not a ton of hazard clearing and resetting hazards and all that jazz. Usually they go up and they stay up, or they go up and they don't come back. But Altaria is very good as a defensive Pokemon in this case for a very reason. Oh, also because Defog got removed from a lot of Pokemon. But guess who didn't lose Defog? That's right. Altaria is one of few Pokemon who actually kept Defog coming into Gen 9. So you have a good Defog user, and you also have this interesting ability called Cloud9. I touched on it for 2 seconds a minute or two ago. But basically, the effects of weather conditions are disabled. So it's like they do not exist. They are not cleared. Once Altaria leaves the field, those weather conditions come back. But when Altaria is on the field, those weather conditions are gone, which means there's no more snow, so Aurora Veil can't be set. There's no more sand, so rock types don't get that 1.5 SPDF boost. There's no more rain, which obviously rain has a ton of stuff, and same with sun. Sun has a ton of stuff. And rain and sun are the two main ones I want to talk about, because rain is very good this meta. I mean, rain's usually very good, but rain's very good, I feel, in this metagame across multiple metas. OU, it's fallen off in OU a little bit, but it's still very good in OU. UU, RU, and anything below NU and PU not so much, but definitely the first three tiers, rain is very good in. And sun is also very interesting because we have a new ability, photosynthesis, which boosts your highest stat by 1.3, or in the case of speed, 1.5, when the sun is up. And Cloud9 disables this. Cloud9 shuts off photosynthesis unless it is activated by booster energy. If it is booster energy activated, Cloud9 does not stop that. But if it is activated by the sun, the photosynthesis boost is shut down while Altaria is on the field. So there, we just told the interesting properties of why Altaria is a good Pokemon for weather counters. But there's got to be more to it than that, right? Like, why would Cloud9, sure, Psyduck has it, Golduck has it. Doesn't make them a good Pokemon, you're right, because they're terrible Pokemon. They'd much rather be using Swift Swim anyway if you are using Golduck. Actually, Cloud9, ironically, is counterintuitive for what Golduck wants to be doing. Altaria can be counterproductive because of Cloud9, actually, because it does have some good weather moves. It has Hurricane and it has Weather Ball, which are both great weather moves, but Altaria is just a PU Pokemon if it's using its natural cure, trying to take advantage, because this thing has no offensive prowess, but what it does have is defensive prowess. It has utility, and it's very good, and it's very interesting. And this Pokemon's move pool is very deep. It doesn't have pivot, and it doesn't have knockoff, which missing those two moves does suck a lot. But what it makes up for is the fact that it does still have access to Defog, a pretty rare now move, which is honestly very important. It clears hazards, clears terrain, and it does still have recovery, which is huge. A lot of Pokemon lost recovery. Recovery's PP got halved, which does suck, but it does still have recovery, which is huge, which allows it to be a check and counter to a lot of weather teams. On the offensive side, no, you don't have much offense. You have 70 attack and 70 special attack. You have 80 speed. You don't have much offense prowess, but your offensive moves options are good. You have a very colorful move pool. You have fairy coverage on both the physical side in Play Rough and on the special side with Moonblast. You have Ice Beam, which Ice Beam might be the greatest coverage move of all time. You have very high base attacks. You have Brave Bird, for example. You have Draco Meteor, for example. You have the very spammable Earthquake, which is fantastic. You do have access to Fire Blast, which you probably would rather run Flamethrower, but you can run Fire Blast if you really want to get that extra base power. It is worth it in a lot of cases, I'll be honest. So you also have Dual Wing Beat, which isn't as useful. Hurricane, which is alright. It has a good secondary effect. It is a good stab option. So you have Parasong, which is interesting. You probably won't run Parasong. Same with Tailwind. Probably won't run those very often, but you can. And that's just the offensive. You have a great offensive move pool. You also have a very interesting status move pool. If you don't want to run Defog in Roost, you're probably not going to want to run Defog in OU. I wouldn't recommend running Altaria in OU, just because the power level is so high. But if you do run it in OU, you probably don't want to run it in OU anyway. You don't want to run Defog in OU because of Golden Go, but you have other great options in your move pool, in your status move pool, such as Cotton Guard, which we already talked about, raise your defense by 3, which means you would switch into a special attacker, and then you can check and counter it. And then you can use Con Guard if they're going to switch out, and then you'll counter their physical attackers too, and it's just fantastic. And then you kind of have to brute force your way through, because again, you don't have the greatest offensive prowess, but it doesn't matter because you're in there and your opponent is going to have to deal with it one way or another. You also have three great sweep stops. Actually, you have one in Haze, which Haze is awesome because it eliminates all stat changes. That's not really ever going to be relevant to Altaria unless you're running Dragon Dance, which in that case you're probably running it in PU, and that's not even the point of why I'm talking about Altaria today. We're not talking about PU offensive strats, any of that stuff. No, this is just for weather in the higher tiers. So you have Haze, which goes to substitute, eliminates all stat changes. Awesome. You also have Roar. So if you really just need to get rid of your opponent's substitute, which you might, because you're Altaria, you're not breaking a sub very easily. You might be, but again, it's not easy. It's grimy. You can just get rid of them altogether. Just get them out of there, switch them to a whole nother Pokemon. It's awesome. And then you also have Will-O-Wisp, which why Altaria has Will-O-Wisp, I could not explain it to you, but it does have Will-O-Wisp, and it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's another tool in your toolkit to stop physical attackers and to slow them down for the entire game, more than just Altaria's time on the field, which the point of checks and counters is that they gain some momentum while they're on the field. While they're on the field, by what I mean is more than just while they're on the field, but like for the other teammates that are also going to have to deal with that Pokemon. So Will-O-Wisp is great for that. I think, no, Altaria does still have Fire Spin. It is possible to run a Fire Spin Parasong set. I'm not sure how really viable that'd be. Well, I take that back. It probably would be pretty useful, honestly, especially because there's a lot of the weather abusers don't really have pivot moves. They just like to stay in. Gouging Fire is the greatest example I can think of right now. So now that you guys kind of understand, I'm trying to think if there's anything else move pool wise you guys might want to know. Not really anything I can think of really. Again, though, you can see how deep its move pool is. I mean, this is insane. So now that you guys kind of understand why Altaria, I have some sets. I've made some sets because I want to give you guys some examples, some inspiration of what you might be able to do with Altaria. So I'm just going to start with some standard sets, special Altaria. On all these sets, I'm running Cloud9, by the way, and heavy duty boots, just because those are the best options. This is just classic Altaria, in my opinion. Just 2 coverage moves: Defog, Roost, Terra Ice type in case you want to power up your Ice Beam, or that way you can reverse the Ice matchup, so Ice isn't doing super effective. 4 times it's actually doing half. I got a physical set. Brave Bird and Earthquake are your 2 greatest physical options. Earthquake is very spammable, one of the best moves of the game, and Brave Bird is an awesome stab option. Unfortunately, it does have a 33% recoil, which does suck, especially for defensive Pokemon, but there's been other Pokemon that have been able, other defensive Pokemon that is, have been able to use Brave Bird to good effect still, such as Corviknight. I got a Sweep Stopper set here, which is just stop and sweeps. You got Haze in case they're subbed up. You got Will-O-Wisp in case they're not subbed up. And then you got Draco Meteor, just some kind of damage output. And that way you can pivot out with it. You can drop a Draco, do a ton of damage. And that way when your opponent switches out, if you can't Haze or Will-O-Wisp, you can at least drop a Draco, get some damage. It's just a nice medium option for covering switches and opponent predictions, getting their sweepers out of there. I did not put a stat spread on this. This is obviously, you can be physically defensive or specially defensive. Really just depends on if you want to go all in with being a physical wall and destroying physical attackers, or if you want to, have some kind of mix options where you can stay in on the special attackers and, bait out the physical ones, and then, you're wisped. The RU rain counter, this is that I've already talked about. I don't really need to talk about it much more. But I did make kind of an OU sun check. And so there's a couple options you could do for the OU sun check. For example, when I made this set, I was thinking of the 3 Paradox Beast, Gouging Fire, which is prehistoric Entei, Walking Wake, which is prehistoric Suicune, and then Raging Bolt, aka the Giraffe, which is prehistoric Raikou. So for this one, I was thinking of Gouging Fire and Walking Wake. Terra Water's very good defensive typing against those two, as they don't have any coverage to take care of that unless they Terra Electric for some reason, or Terra Grass, I suppose. But it's very good for them. The Con Guard allows it to defend against Gouging Fire, whereas the 128 plus in special defense allows it to counter Walking Wake. Earthquake and Play Rough for Walking Wake, Earthquake for Gouging Fire, just good damage overall. You could, I would consider doing a minus on defense maybe, but then you're effectively neutering yourself as a counter to Gouging Fire. But I mean, you could do that and run Moonblast instead of Play Rough. I wouldn't recommend it personally, but you could do it. The other thing is, I do have 128 speed on this thing because Gouging Fire, according to the Pokemon Damage Calculator, the Raging Bolt set, OU Calm Mind, typically runs 164 speed. Now, if Raging Bolt isn't running any speed, there's no reason to run any speed. You are naturally faster than Raging Bolt, and you can just max out your special defense stat. But in the case that you want to be able to specifically outspeed this Raging Bolt set, you got to run 128. Dump the rest in Spadef. Instead of Terra Water, if you want to counter, say, Walking Wake and Raging Bolt, I would go with the Terra Grass. That covers for everything, gets rid of your Dragon weakness. And then Earthquake and Play Rough are still good coverage options to kill the both of those. If you want to do I'm trying to think. I didn't think of the possibility of a Gouging Fire in Raging Bolt, because I honestly do not see those two combined nearly as much as the other two combinations. But if you want to do that, you wouldn't want to do Terra Grass, obviously. You'd probably want to do Terra Ground if that was the case. You could also do Terra Fairy. Terra Fire would also be adequate, but if you're Terra Fire, then you open yourself up to the Gouging Fire having Earthquake. So I'd probably do Terra Fairy. Probably Terra Fairy is your best bet, in my opinion. But you can run. You have options there. Terra Ground. Terra Ground was the other one. Terra Ground would also be very good. You can also be ballsy because not every Gouging Fire runs Dragon coverage, so you naturally wall those Gouging Fires as well, which is really cool. Now, I said at the beginning that Altaria wasn't very good into the ground, or into the sandstorm and the snow weather conditions, but I do have a modest proposal here. Altaria is a good pivoter in the sense that Cloud9 comes out and blocks the snow. So here's what I'm thinking, folks. Most brain dead Ninetales Alolan players, they send their Ninetales Alolan out and they click the Aurora Veil button. Every single one of them, almost every single one of them. If they start with it, they're going to click it. They're not going to click the ice move expecting an Altaria to come in. So you have the element of surprise. So you can bring in Altaria, Cloud9, shut down the snow for that turn. Oh, look at that. Ninetales Alola got caught with his pants down. No Aurora Veil for you. Now, your opponent's a little confused. They might be a little pissed. But the most important thing is they're either going to switch out with that Ninetales because they're shut down, or the more predictable option, they're going to click either Freeze Dry or Moonblast, in which that is the perfect time to bring in your Steel type who can outspeed Ninetales Alola. And what options? Oh, well, Arceus does obviously outspeed it, but let's just look at our options here. You could do a Choice Scarf Golden Go. You could do a Booster Energy Iron Treads. In the case that's OU, that is. In UU, which is now where it resides, you could do a Choice Scarf or a Booster Energy Iron Crown. You could do Metagross because Metagross does have Bullet Punch. Also Scizor. Scizor also has Bullet Punch. Tinkaton probably wouldn't be a good Tinkaton wouldn't be. But so you got options. You do have options for who you could switch in to make sure that Aurora Veil doesn't go up. Because if your opponent can't get that Aurora Veil up and their team revolves around it, that is huge. So Altaria, not a great direct snow counter, but against Ninetales Alolan, it does have the matchup in the case that your opponent is probably not going to get an Aurora Veil up if you play it correctly. And they're probably not going to click Aurora Veil for a second time in a row if you're in there. They're probably not. They're either going to switch out or they're going to click one of their stat buttons, which are both really good in Altaria. So you can almost say Altaria is a snow fisher in that regard. Because, yeah, you kind of are fishing out snow. If you really want to be ballsy and stay in, you could do like a Terra-type Steel. And then the problem is you don't really have a great move to hit Ninetales Alolan, except if you want to just do that Fire Blast like we talked about earlier, you could do that. You could also do a Terra Steel Blast. I wouldn't recommend that. Don't think that's a great idea, but in theory, you could. So that's all I have to say about that. So it's not a direct Sun counter, but Altaria can dance around Ninetales Alola, the most prominent snow Pokemon. Also, same goes to Abomasnow, actually to an even greater effect. Now, Abomasnow is in ZU right now, but it can come up to the higher tiers when it needs to set up snow for its buddy Titan. Its speed is 156, so you naturally outspeed it. And again, the same thing. I guarantee you that a Fire Blast sends this thing to the next dimension. In fact, I'd put money on it. You probably could just run Flamethrower and get away with it, honestly. Snow is not up. Flamethrower actually does like nothing. Okay, but on mine is special attack. So if you want to do just neutral, Flamethrower does 61 to 72. Fire Blast would do 74 to 88. If you put some investment, you could get a, like, for example, 128 special attack. You could get a 31% chance to Oko Abomasnow, and that is one down for your opponent. You don't have to deal with snow the rest of the game. You could sack Altaria for something else, or, you know, you're up a Pokemon. You're up a sack now. So either way, you come out on top. So I would say Altaria could even work as a snow counter. Rock, I cannot attest to as much. The best thing Altaria has against Rock is either Ice Beam for Hippowdon or Earthquake for Tyranitar. And against Tyranitar, you're probably going to have to burn a Terra just to beat it. You could also run Moonblast for Tyranitar. Because it does not get that special defense boost anymore, it is a little bit more vulnerable to that Moonblast. So I would say it's not an effective sand counter, but in a pinch, it could do the job. Some of the sand abusers, like Excadrill, you could just Fire Blast the hell out of them. You're probably not running enough speed to be faster than them, though, is the only problem. So it's not really a great counter to that. But you still have tools that you could use to do that. So that's all I'm going to say about Altaria. I really do stand by this Pokemon being a great counter to different weather conditions. It's obviously not the best. It is just not. It's not going to be the best. It's not going to be the best. Like, put this Mon on a pedestal. It does everything Pokemon. That's why it is in PU. But if your team's Achilles heel is a weather condition, Altaria is the answer to filling that hole and still compressing other things into it. So that's what I have to say about Altaria. Let me know your thoughts down below. Is this a horrible take? I don't know. I have a lot of bad takes, so this might be one of them. But I stand by it. Even if it is a bad take, I stand by it. I will be using Altaria more in the future when I feel like my teams are bad into a weather matchup, because I put my money where my mouth is. But if you guys think this is a bad take, let me know in the comments. If you guys think this is a good take, put it down below in the comments. If you guys want to make a team for me with Altaria, join the Discord. Throw me a Pokepaste. SketchX has been giving me like a million teams, so y'all can give me a Pokepaste. Even if you want me to use some dumb Natural Cure Dragon Dance set, go ahead, send it over. I'll use it. I don't care. I'll use it. Why not? So that's all I got for you today, folks. Thank you again very much for watching. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you listening. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.